I'm
So,
ready.
welcome to the Marketer Zone. The Marketer Zone is a platform for marketers to share their story and their experiences and inspire a generation of fearless and passionate marketers. And today, our first guest is none other than Denis Ndavi, a man who's been in this industry for over 20 years with a specialty in the media industry. He's also a friend of the Top Marketers Club. And when we were thinking of the first person to have on this set, his name was on top of that list. So Dennis is going to share with us his story, his marketing journey, and basically enlighten us. Karibu, Dennis.
Asante, Victor.
Yeah, so where did your marketing journey start?
Wow. I think it started in high school because there was business studies and I took business studies.
Okay.
If you want to talk about failure, I also took agriculture. I suffered during the practicals because we had to plant a maize thing on your plot.
It was the amazing.
So I realized that after the blisters of trying to plow my plot, this one wasn't for me. At the same time, we're trying to pick our electives. So I had a choice between marketing or law because I like talking.
Yeah. I can attest to that.
And finally, towards the end of the game, I realized marketing sounds nice. I must clarify that my mystification about marketers was all these cool guys in ad agencies, looking good and, the bling bling of the business side.
Yeah.
And that was my thought. When I got into BCom, which was in KU, I did many things. My mother already enrolled me into accounts. So I'm a Strath accounts guy as well. So I used to balance between the two. But when the time came to choose what elective I wanted, it had to be marketing. And I found marketing interesting. Resources back then were analog. You'd go into the library in the university. So I didn't know that much about it. So again, I was not prepared. I wanted to get into it, but I wasn't prepared for what the realities were.
Out of curiosity, how many marketers were in your class?
I think we were about 80.
Wow. The reason I'm saying wow is because it's quite a contrast nowadays. It's like there's a steady decline. When we were graduating, I think we were just like 12 in our class.
Wow. Yeah, well, you see, marketing, there's the name, and already people have okay. When I told my mother I want to do marketing, do you know the first thing she told me? Like, you want to become an insurance salesperson? Because to them, in their generation, that's what marketing was, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, you'd find the guys in town selling socks. That's a marketer. So again, it was clarifying, what does marketing mean for you and what is it? It's about putting products in people's hands and the whole pipeline down the line. But I was seen as a aspiring insurance salesperson or a guy who sells socks. And I was like, oh no. So I had to find a way to work my own way around it about how I understand it and what it meant to be. And in school, that's when I started thinking about how to create a brand that was a media station. So my biggest paper in school was about creating a radio station. And mine was called, it was fictitious, and it was called Capital Radio Kenya. Quite ironic.
So your obsession with media actually started in campus?
Yes. I had two fixations. One was media, the other one was cars. So in my third year, something happened on campus and we were all sent home. And it was a long extended holiday.
Strike, I guess.
Yes, as usual. So I saw an ad in the newspaper and said, we're looking for 4x4 salespeople. Like, hey, I've got nothing to lose. So I wrote in and I sent my letter. Back then, no email, no nothing. Write the letter by hand and put it in an envelope, stick a stamp on it and send it. And I got a reply. So out of 5,000 guys, over 5,000 guys who applied, my letter seemed to stand out. And from my third year, I became a seller of cars.
While you're still in campus? Wow.
Third year.
Which franchise was this?
It was an interesting one. All I can say right now, I sold 4x4 cars across Kenya. And I had to juggle between schooling and selling cars. But I liked cars.
Were you part of any student association? I know at the University of Nairobi, there was the Marketing Student Association. Were you part of any of that in campus? Was it existing at the time?
Yes, at the time we had Marketing Students Association of KU. I think it was MKUSA, and I was also the vice president of marketing for ISEC KU.
The reason I ask is because most of the experience we actually get comes from that association. Did you do any stuff that you would say prepared you for like the job market whilst in the association?
Yes. Every time, at the same time, I was also part of fundraising for KU Cultural Week. And the interesting thing about that was you meet these corporates. Now, these corporates, I didn't know I was doing the right thing at the time, but I kept the same contacts. For everybody, we asked for sponsorships, in kind or in cash. So I actually learned about fundraising and sponsorship. And the crazy thing of leaving your campus room, dressing up, and you have to present a corporate or professional look to this person that you're asking for money for the university. And I kept all those contacts. The learnings were back then, it was still the 10% rule. Only 10% would get back to us. It was even crazier when you're making those phone calls from the phone booth on the university grounds. If they don't answer, or if you're kept on hold for too long, your coins just keep going through the phone booth thing. And you're trying to get a deal. And then somebody says, okay, send us a supplementary letter to clarify these things. You know, you have to go back, write it again, or find a friend who does secretarial.
Yeah.
Again, throw it in the envelope and post it and wait for a response. So it was snail space marketing, but that's how I had to learn.
Let's go snail mail.
Oh yeah.
So you finished campus. I'm guessing you transitioned to your first job.
Yes.
Which was?
I did not transition because my transition started in my fourth year of university. So I was already working.
You got a job when you were in fourth year? Okay.
Yes. It was called Media Street. And we used to create the KTN advertising and KBC advertising. And I was the sales guy. And that hustle taught me about what media in Kenya is and how it works. So I had very supportive teammates and very supportive bosses who actually taught me. They're the ones who taught me how to use even a computer in the marketing world. Because on one end, I'm in class learning computer science, but we didn't even have a computer. I'd never even held a mouse.
Wow.
But in the workplace, yes, there was a huge disparity. But the workmates were so supportive, they taught me. And that's how I learned how to use Word, PowerPoint, Excel. And those were my building blocks from learning at the workplace. Because I was a campus guy, but I did not have any hands-on knowledge on how to use these things and how to connect it to a printer and print out that thing that you were working on. So that was a unique challenge for me. But I learned. And from that point on, I also learned how to do voiceovers for the same ads I was selling. And the next thing I knew, the Capital FM opportunity came.
I was actually going to ask when you started the voiceover thing. So that started still in campus?
Post-campus.
Post-campus.
Those
are like 2 years. I saw a break before you joined Capital. So I'm guessing that it's during those 2 years.
I was ambitious.
Yeah.
So after selling cars for a bit, I started an agency, and it was called The Agency. We were that ambitious back then. With two of my colleagues, there was Ahmed Kassam, who used to be at Capital doing the Asian show, and there was Edward Quach. And the three of us teamed up and created The Agency, and it was a voiceover agency. And we were just trying to see how we can grow voice talent and face talent. So Capital FM became one of our clients because people wanted voiceover talent. It's when I was dealing at the agency that Linda Holt came and said, "Hey, dude, why don't you come and join us?" And I said, yeah. And that was my transition into media.
And that's where you stuck. Looking at your profile, you've stayed in media for the longest time ever, over 15 years of those.
Yeah. There's a comment I once heard from my brother Eric, and he said, media is an ungrateful mistress because you give her all your heart and soul and passion, but she will never necessarily give you gratitude, but you'll stay there because you love her. And I guess I've been with her ever since. Media.
You've been in love for a very long time.
It's been a long one, man.
So I want to know how that career progression was. Because when you started off at Capital, you were like a marketing and creative services manager up until marketing director to brand manager. You're marketing director at EATV.
Yeah.
The only thing I remember about EATV was this presenter who used to say "Tuma Saram."
I remember him.
So how was that progression? You seem like you progressed very fast to marketing director.
Well, the work I was doing apparently was noticed across the border, because at the same time, my brother and Bob Kyoko created this entity called the East African Chart Show. And when my brother left Capital, I was left with the show. So I tried to innovate, tweak the show a bit. And the show used to also air in Tanzania and Uganda. How a syndicated show would happen back then was very different from now. It was a DAT tape. Victor, do you know what a DAT tape is?
I know.
Okay. A DAT tape was like this big. So record a copy onto the show and it would go on to, I think it was a Kamba bus. Okay? Two buses. So one tape goes to Dar es Salaam and the other tape would go to Kampala. And that is how, and they'd air my show 2 or 3 days later or the week later. Because I mean, you're sending it by bus. There was no digital transmission of these things. It was physical. So at the same time, I had a lot of good contacts with my friends like Mike Strano and the rest. So when they were across the region, they'd spread the word about me and about my show. And when it came to be that this guy does creative, he does programming, and he also does marketing, I got a phone call from Tanzania, and one of the leading media moguls said, come and join me. Voice talent and face talent. So Capital FM became one of our clients because people wanted voiceover talent. It's when I was dealing at the agency that Linda Holt came and said, hey, dude, why don't you come and join us? And I said, yeah. And that was my transition into media.
And that's where you stuck. Looking at your profile, you've stayed in media for the longest time ever, over 15 years of those.
Yeah. There's a comment I once heard from my brother Eric, and he said, media is an ungrateful mistress because you give her all your heart and soul and passion, but she will never necessarily give you gratitude, but you'll stay there because you love her. And I guess I've been with her ever since. Media.
You've been in love for a very long time.
It's been a long one, man.
So I want to know how that career progression was. Because when you started off at Capital, you were like a marketing and creative services manager up until marketing director to brand manager. You're marketing director at EATV.
Yeah.
The only thing I remember about EATV was this presenter who used to say "Tuma Saram."
I remember him.
So how was that progression? You seem like you progressed very fast to marketing director.
Well, the work I was doing apparently was noticed across the border, because at the same time, my brother and Bob Kyoko created this entity called the East African Chart Show. And when my brother left Capital, I was left with the show. So I tried to innovate, tweak the show a bit. And the show used to also air in Tanzania and Uganda. How a syndicated show would happen back then was very different from now. It was a DAT tape. Victor, do you know what a DAT tape is?
No.
Okay. A DAT tape was like this big. So record a copy onto the show and it would go on to, I think it was a Kamba bus. Okay? Two buses. So one tape goes to Dar es Salaam and the other tape would go to Kampala. And that is how, and they'd air my show 2 or 3 days later or the week later. Because I mean, you're sending it by bus. There was no digital transmission of these things. It was physical. So at the same time, I had a lot of good contacts with my friends like Mike Strano and the rest. So when they were across the region, they'd spread the word about me and about my show. And when it came to be that this guy does creative, he does programming, and he also does marketing, I got a phone call from Tanzania, and one of the leading media moguls said, come and join me. It was a no-brainer because I love East African music. I love music. And I said, yeah, let's do this. So we went on to start East Africa Radio, which became East Africa Radio and TV. And yeah.
That set up the platform for you to join a bigger group. I'm guessing MTV was much bigger.
Now with MTV, MTV, their guy, I love him to death. He's called Mr. Alex Okosi. He watched the Tanzania feed, and one day I got a phone call, and a guy says, hey, I'm from MTV. I'm watching your feed in Nigeria. How are you guys doing it? I'm like, no, it's a satellite feed. He's like, whoa. He said, I'm coming there in the next few days. And he appeared at my office and said, dude, let's deal. And that's how I got into MTV Base Africa, just by doing the work.
Wow, amazing. How was it being a brand manager? That whole experience of being a brand manager. You've transitioned from different roles, sales, marketing director. Now you are a brand manager.
Well, nothing ever changed because the aim was still the same. How do you push your brand and make sure clients appreciate what you're doing? More importantly is, if clients don't know what you're doing and what you're offering that's uniquely different, there will be no conversations. So I learned about the power of conversations. They must know what you're doing, okay? Whether you're a marketing manager, sales manager, communications manager, PR manager, it's all the same thing. You'll never get traction on your brand unless you're able to engage the client in an interesting conversation, and they can imagine success for your brand or their brand based on what you're saying and what you're offering. So I had to learn the power of magical conversations, and also not being boring, because everybody's flooding clients with proposals, but not all of them are interesting. So how do you differentiate yourself so that your conversation is uniquely different, so that people immediately answer your phone call or look at your email or give it consideration? So I had to learn that in record time. And it's still the same now. Marketers need to be interesting with unique propositions.
I agree. Value proposition tops it all. So, you've had 2 commercial director roles. Will you tell us what they entail?
Wow. So, the biggest myth is, and I learned this from a long time ago, actually from Linda Holt. I was told, do not be an order taker, okay? Because an order taker does not sustain a business, because that's the assumption that people always call you for business or always give you an order. However, if you do not have a relationship with your client, you will never be in that space where they will call you when good times and hard times. So I've had situations where the client does not have money, but they need a favor. If not a favor, a boost, or they don't have enough budget to sustain the campaign that they want to do with you. I had to learn about more important things than orders, which is empathy, which is relationship selling, and creative-led selling. Sometimes it does not end with a sales voucher. It doesn't even begin there, because your conversation starts with a human being. If they don't like you, they won't buy from you. If they don't trust you, they won't buy from you. If you're not interesting, they won't pay you any mind. So the word commercial has been overly abused because it's not about taking orders. It's about owning commercial conversations, which goes beyond money. How many commercial people ever think about the welfare of the person who is supposed to sign the LPO or the order? And that's the bedrock that will sustain your business if you have the right relationships and the right understanding. Those are my learnings. It's not about money. Money comes later. But first, do you have a relationship? Do you even have an idea? Are you even, is your proposition even compelling to the same client? How will they remember you years down the line or months down the line? A client can tell you no now for any number of reasons, sometimes because they don't have the budget. But what if they do 3 months from now? Are you still in their radar? What did you leave with them that was compelling enough for the conversation to continue?
So relationship first, money later.
Yes.
Speaking of clients, what was the most memorable, I would say, is it a campaign that you've worked on?
No.
For a client?
In recent memory, when we launched Energy Radio, it was a tough sell because we were punching above our weight. You're a brand new radio station. You have almost no legacy. You have almost no track record, but you're bringing in one of Kenya's, the world's biggest hip hop artists. Now, to get corporate support and sponsors, we had to pitch it. And it was selling based on spirit. If you don't understand our vibe, this is not for you. And as the clock counted down towards this launch and this epic concert with Rick Ross, it was phone calls flying all over the place. And as the traction of the campaign grows, all of a sudden, you have more and more clients coming back to you and saying, okay, we thought you were joking in the beginning, but this seems like you're really serious and you're onto something. So by the time it materialized, the diverse mix of sponsors and clients that we had was amazing. And even the event was amazing because it was built on start from ground zero and just build it brick by brick, and also delivering on the fact that you didn't think he's gonna get here he is. It's done. And that set a platform for so many other conversations. A second one I can count on is the Capital FM's 4th birthday. And the 4th birthday party, which was back in Carnival, nobody believed it would work. And in the middle of the planning stress, some old friends came in. Okay, I even tell you that was like in a Big Ted, Big Kev, Dicky, and Dicky, and we combined Capital FM's 4th birthday with Miss Kenya. My learnings from there was when you synergize two brands, and it was Capital FM and Miss Kenya. We had the biggest event in Carnival because everybody leveraged what they had, and the synergies were so amazing, and the love from the market was amazing, and we did not lack for sponsors. So sometimes you bet on your heart and things will just come to life because you believe in it and you're keeping in touch with the people that you want to be in your set and in your circuit.
So synergy is needed to excel. So you always need to be on the lookout for opportunities for synergy.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. I'd never had, I was very skeptical about the Rick Ross. We didn't believe he was going to come. But you guys proved us wrong. Yeah, that was great. So now we are entering a new era. I'm guessing in all those years, you've never had something as disruptive as COVID-19. How do you think marketers can navigate these waters right now through such a period that none of us has ever experienced before? Especially in media, I guess, with your specialization. Yeah.
Well, I've always been a believer in the fact that the digital tsunami was going to come. It had to be COVID that made it come to life, because we always knew that marketing and relationships have to embrace the digital perspective. A lot of brands had held back because being digital is not about having a website. It's about having all the different touch points to connect with the audience, even down to closing and sealing the retail transaction. Now that everybody, it's so clear in their minds that you must have an intimate digital connection with your audience, everybody has to be more sensitized on how they themselves can ramp up and build their base. Brick and mortar industries are becoming rare and they're threatened, unless you're in manufacturing or something. But from banking and everywhere else, people have learned that now in this era, if you have less physical interactions, if there's social distancing, if you have curfew laws, if you have new forms of taxation and new ways of meeting people, you have to do the shift, and you have to kick yourself in the butt to move the way you're talking to people, liaising with your staff, liaising with clients, even the shape of client meetings, and on the more social level, client interactions. It's got to change. That's number one. Number two, a digital relationship, we know, will never ever replace a physical one, where someone can see you, look at you, ascertain your trust. And there's also the subliminal human piece of, I'm in this person's space, I know them and I trust them. People have to learn on how do you rejig your entire business formula to adjust to this. Some of your clients will not be willing to have a physical meeting, but how do you jump through all those hoops of trust, getting to know each other through a digital platform? At the same time, with limited physical interaction, everybody's got to change. Luckily, I never believed in long meetings in the first place, because they don't have any space in the world of a busy marketer. But now people are learning that time is also money. Even digital connections are also money. Also, there used to be a lot of pride in things like driving around. But traffic, we know, costs us what? 50 million shillings per day? If everybody understood there are other ways to meet and connect, we've freed up a lot of money and time and frustration in our industry and in our market. So it's just becoming more client-centric and just becoming more empathetic in the way that we deal with people based on the new rules and the new normal.
I want to pick up from the new normal and now take it on a national level, if I may. Of course, the country's been hit. Tourism is one of our biggest income earners. How do you think, as a country, we're gonna get back on our feet? Because marketing is gonna be very key. And in 2011, you were at NOC, that's the National Olympic Committee. How do you think we can get the country back bouncing and even bigger? What do you think the guys tasked with that will be able to do?
Well, number one, something that should be taught and preached is patience. Because number one, there's wait and see. It's really sad to think that if you're angry and you fight back and say, I'm gonna rush back to work, that you'll defeat this virus, because it's something that's beyond us. It's not a human thing. So number one is patience. Number two is looking, learning, and observing. Number three, I go back to empathy. Number four is trying to innovate within your own sphere. You've seen certain brands have even started doing virtual tourism tours, where you can still engage somebody, because remember, even when it comes down to experiential marketing, and that's actually what tourism is, there are multiple senses that you can touch with a human being. Does it really mean that someone has to come there? No. There are different ways to engage them and still monetize. So it's just up to everyone within their individual industry, no matter what their immediate situation is, figuring out how to tweak it so that they can get the most engagement from their current and potential customers. Shopping has changed. Everything else can change.
Patience is going to be key in this fight. You recently made a transition, as we went down. You made a transition from that corporate life and ventured into the world of entrepreneurship. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. The company is called Mogul Communications Limited. It's myself and my twin brother Eric. We used to work together at Capital FM. So I was marketing, he was creative. And for a lot of our lives, we were competitors. Because the elements or the value that we'd bring to the table in the different media entities or advertising agencies were competitive, yet we'd complement each other. So, Insight said, as we go into the later stage, or shall we say the golden stage of your career, why don't we pair up and answer all the questions that we had, or correct the issues we found within the marketing and media industry? So we created Mogul Communications. So my brother is an award-winning creative director, amazing man, and he's seen it from all touch points. On my end, I'm understood media and digital and experiential and strategy. So what's the way forward as we move forward in our careers? Let's create our own entity and see how we can also create best practice to help or correct the inefficiencies that we see in the marketing, media, advertising, and experiential industries in Kenya. At the same time, how can we create a platform that creates new jobs, new opportunities, and brings in a wider, diverse pool of talent that answer the issues that clients have? From my end, I know clients have issues. How do you answer their problems in an honest, succinct, face-to-face way that removes the former blockages that were there and the things that we've seen? So we are the creative and communications and media house. Welcome.
This is one of those synergies you were talking about that you've implemented now in real life. I'm so certain that you guys are going to do great things. What advice would you give a young marketer who's about to leave campus right now?
Well, I'll keep it simple. I'll tell them, just because you've left campus doesn't mean education ends there. So keep reading. Number 2, keep learning. Because learning is not just about reading. So keep learning. There's so many insights you can borrow, even just from observation. Number 3, I'd say network. You have to connect with other individuals, otherwise you're not a marketer. People is key. I'd say number 4, find a mentor. Find someone who's done it longer than you, who's better than you, smarter than you, richer than you. And by sitting at the feet of their greatness, you might get those insights. Okay? Number 5, just work, even for free if you have to, but you have to exercise that muscle, because the things that you're trying to get to are not there right now. But the more you're in the game, the opportunities will come to you because you're being exposed and you're pushing that muscle. Yeah.
Thanks. That's very invaluable advice. So, a parting shot.
Stay curious and love what you do what you love. Otherwise, it's not worth it.
Thank you. Many thanks, Denis Ndavi, for joining us in this first edition of the Marketers Zone. I also want to thank you on behalf of the club for the much you have done for us. You're turning 4 this year, and in our book of experience, you will not miss a page. We look forward to having you in more events and taking part in activities which are aimed at building the marketing industry. Thank you, and have a good evening.
All right. Thank you. Good night.